by using humor, first of all, it connects the younger generation. If you scroll through TikTok,
sure,
you go through Gen Z, all they want is jokes. That's all they want. And it's very effective in that sense. And then two, I think that the younger generation especially, they really value authenticity. And so when people are willing to make fun of themselves a little bit, or maybe they just even give an indicator that they don't take themselves too seriously, a lot of times they're right on board with you.
Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to Framework Leadership, where we talk with leaders from across the globe, explore leadership techniques and strategies for, guiding organizations to achieve success and health. I'm your host, Ken Engel, president of Southeastern University.
And I'm your co-host, Michael Steiner, senior vice president for advancement and innovation.
Wow. That's a lot.
I know.
But it's good.
I made eye contact with you.
I know.
I looked right into your soul.
I was like, whoa.
Yeah. That's really something.
We're excited. We're excited to add another voice to the conversation. Joining us as co-host is Dr. Chris Palmer, Dean of, let's see, what are you,
Ministry
Dean? Ministry and Theology.
There you go.
Yes,
titles around here.
Pastor Barnett's Ministry and Theology here.
Wonderful.
Yep. And been so since August 1, right?
Yeah, been so. And
first semester's about under the belt.
Under the belt. We can tell because the cold is here.
There you go.
Freezing here in Florida. It's, 68 degrees or something?
Yeah,
I don't know. But anyway, it's great. Welcome to the podcast. Glad you're here. We have a great guest. I want to introduce Taylor Ransom. Taylor is a rising social media comedian, content creator known for hilarious takes on everything from church culture, homeschooling, faith-based humor, and unique ability to combine wit and relatability. And Taylor has quickly built a dedicated audience while using his platform to inspire, positivity and connection among a generation drawn to a lot of digital influence. So Taylor, great to have you with us today.
Than's you. It's an honor to be here.
Yeah.
I wish I had as cool of a title as you all have. I'll have to settle.
I know all these great titles.
I'll have to settle for senior global pastor at Daddy's House Church.
That works for me.
It's good.
Let's start the conversation. Humor is an incredible way to communicate. There's no doubt about it. It's almost kind of a type of language in and of itself. And I think it's many times overlooked by leaders and communicators and getting the message across. When it's used, though, it breaks down, I think, walls. It breaks down barriers. Why do you think humor does break down walls where other communication methods struggle?
Sure. So with comedy, there's a whole lot less sales pitch. So if someone can laugh, usually right away their walls fall down a little bit. They're like, oh, we're having fun. We're kind of playing a game a little bit. And it also, if you're good at comedy, it enables you to very quickly communicate a message. It enables you to, the really good comics, they will break down a 30-minute talk on politics or life, whatever they're talking about. They sum it up in a 5-minute story about their wife cooking breakfast.
Yeah.
And comedy, I think that it works very well. And it's very funny because I know a lot of very, very talented communicators who are pastors. And I tell many of them, I'm like, you should go to a comedy club on an open mic night and you should just go for it. Because so many of them are so funny. It's like a natural talent that they have.
Yeah. How, there's a lot of those traditional settings. And how can leaders in some of those traditional settings use humor effectively without coming across as sometimes insincere or minimizing their message?
Sure. So you have to really work out where the lines are. So in my comedy and my humor, we do talk a lot about churches, specifically mega churches a lot of times. And I don't have an axe to grind with mega churches, but there are some things that are very sacred. Like, for example, we're not going to ever make fun of prayer.
Sure.
We never name drop or call out someone specifically. It's not about that. It's more about just connecting people around a core message and telling people to seek out a personal relationship with God and connect with their local church. And also celebrating a little bit of the culture. I grew up in the culture that I'm in. And I think a lot of people. I'm blessed to have a lot of great friends within Christian faith, and a lot of that is because they know I'm in the house. I'm not outside the house going at them. I'm from the inside, and I'm just pointing out stuff. And so I think that a lot of leaders, by using humor, first of all, it connects the younger generation. If you scroll through TikTok,
sure,
you go through Gen Z, all they want is jokes. That's all they want. want. It's very effective in that sense. And then two, I think that the younger generation especially, they really value authenticity. And so when people are willing to make fun of themselves a little bit, or maybe they just even give an indicator that they don't take themselves too seriously, a lot of times they're right on board with you.
Yeah. And I know your humor, comes from a lot of embracing some of those awkward moments and flaws in your own experiences in life and church. What's a funny mistake you've experienced that maybe should be avoided in leadership?
That should be avoided in leadership. Where do we begin?
That's kind of a broad question.
How long should this podcast be? Well, a mistake that I've made specifically. I'll tell you early on when I started out. I'm a PK. My first jobs were in church. And I worked in church. And when I was young, I actually wanted to be a pastor, believe it or not. I wanted to go into the ministry. And I believe that God's blessed me to where I am, just in a different way. But when I started out, I did not try to be myself at all. I was floor directing a Christian television show for a pastor, and he was awesome to me. He was great to me. He shared his platform with me and brought me along and mentored me. But it's very easy from the get-go to say, okay, well, I need to do what everybody else is doing. I need to do the right way. I need to do things the way that other people have been successful at doing. But people are far more effective when they just recognize what God's called them to do and how they go about doing things. So when I tried to do things like my pastor or like other people that I followed, it didn't work out. It doesn't work out. And I think you see that happen a lot in leadership too. A lot of people, they grab a book off the shelf and they read it and they try to do it. But a lot of times their personality and their personal leadership style is just not always completely compatible. There might be things here and there that work, but just copy and pasting someone else's approach doesn't work. And so, that's one thing I had to do, and all great leaders have, in some sense, found their own way of going about things. And so I would say that's a mistake that I've made, when I was first starting out, was trying to be like other people.
Yeah. And what was the first moment you felt like, all right, I think I'm finding my own way. I'm finding my own ways. How did that happen?
When I started making fun of the things I used to do.
There we go. Okay. I love it.
When I realized, I was like, no, I'm actually being kind of silly.
Right. And I think a lot of leaders have a hard time with that, right? Like,
Sure.
It's like, how do you critically look at yourself and be like, okay, there's things that I need to improve on. There's things I need to do on there. And it takes a lot of kind of really courage, right?
Sure.
To self-reflect on that. What does that process look like for you?
It's courage, but I think it's also humility. A lot of great leaders are very humble.
Yeah.
And, the ones that have a humility to them, first of all, people are immediately attracted to them, immediately are connected to that. Nobody likes a leader who thinks that, they're Steve Jobs.
Yeah.
But if they're humble, first of all, that allows you to look at yourself and look at your own errors a little bit, and also allows you to hear other people who call you out or who might mention to you, hey, this isn't really working. And so I think humility is really the key to that.
Yeah. Yeah. And you kind of find yourself in the middle of, what is really, we're in this interesting time in kind of Christianity, right? Especially social media based Christianity where, there's this idea of critiquing ourselves, right? But then there's this idea that some people go too far, right? And this is where you end up with, the preachers in sneakers where, okay, what started as, all right, this is kind of legit, maybe a little bit funny, this is kind of thing. And all of a sudden you end up in a documentary trying to teach church history, and I'm like, that dude has no idea what he's talking about. It's like, this is a dude that posted a couple memes, and now you want him to be an expert on evangelicalism.
I don't know, what was he saying? Was he saying that Saint Ignatius wore dunks?
Right, something. Yeah, it was like it was in the documentary. So how do we, in your opinion, how can we as a church address this? How can we move? How can we embrace it, but also understand that we're all in the same house?
Yeah, you have to understand that. I think if you look a little bit with Preachers and Sneakers, for example. By the way, his Instagram page is for sale. We should all buy it. He's actually selling it.
Wow.
He's selling his whole page. We should buy it right now.
How much?
We will put Dr. Ingalls in some Louis Vuitton dunks. And
buy his
we'll
page.
say sign up for SEU today. Apply today. I think that that's a complicated question. How do you go at it? I mean, you look at the younger generation, which I think goes too far in that they don't take anything seriously, really.
Right.
A lot of them are very nihilistic. Chris Palmer will talk about that. And then
He'll tell us what it means.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that some people just and this is me being anecdotal, but I think that some people kind of forget that God likes to have fun.
Yeah.
This is, God, while things are sincere, things are reverent, there are holy things, that shouldn't be messed with, but God is not boring. He's not someone he wouldn't give you a personality that enjoys fun or that likes to make jokes if he didn't want you to use it. And so, I think the way to bridge that really is just to show, first of all, we can take a joke. I think the church is a lot more approachable if it can take a joke.
Yeah.
So there's been times where people have, in good sincerity, tried to make a joke that's funny.
Sure.
But there's backlash, and it's like widespread backlash.
Right.
And we've seen instances like that happen in humor just recently in culture.
Sure.
So when there's backlash, why do you think that is? What causes that? Have you had it in your own experience?
I've had a little bit of that here and there. Yeah. My church Karen bits usually get that response on Facebook, specifically on Facebook. Specifically Facebook, specifically that character.
Yes.
Some people, for different reasons, maybe they don't understand the full context. They don't understand why you're doing what you're doing. They think that you're just looking to take a hit at them somehow. Or some people who let's just legitimately just take themselves too seriously. There are cases of that. And so I think, a lot of people get upset. I mean, if somebody started making videos just mapping me out, making jokes about me every day, I'd probably be at first a little bit ticked. Now I've been on the internet long enough where I probably wouldn't pay much attention to it, to be honest. But
that shouldn't be the comedian's goal, is for the backlash.
No. I never make anything with like, oh, this is going to make somebody mad. No, the point is like, oh no, a lot of people are going to relate with this. They're going to laugh at this. This is going to be funny. So that's the goal. So if I ever do post something and I'm getting a certain amount of backlash, which doesn't happen often, and it's only those Church Karen videos that I mentioned, it's like, okay, well, let's reconsider next time we make this. Let's remember exactly what it was about this.
So then
that was a thing.
Then in the critique, then do you hope that it's seen as sincere? Like, I really care about this thing.
Right.
That's why I'm critiquing it.
Yeah, there needs to be sincerity to it. People can understand when you're celebrating something or even just highlighting something, just bringing this up. Hey, haven't we all seen this? Hasn't this all happened to all of us before? And they can tell when you're just looking to just start trouble or something. And so you never want to have that attitude that you're just coming to start trouble. And that's not what any of us want to do. I still want to make it to heaven, believe it or not. So I don't go too heavy on that.
We all do.
Yeah, we all do.
I'd like to go first class, preferably, not spirit. I'll settle for spirit if I have to, but I'd rather go first class.
When you think about social media and being creative and innovative can be, can be so easy to fall. You can fall into kind of being too polished or even somewhat have a persona that's fake.
True.
So obviously you're creating characters and scenarios that may not be real per se.
Right.
How do you stay balanced? How do you balance staying, I think, authentic, real to your faith, yet you're trying to navigate some of the trends, some of the issues, the pressures that are out there in the digital space?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, it's very easy for a lot of content creators to look at numbers and go, oh, this is being successful, let me lean into this. But at the end of the day, you need to be true to your calling. You need to be true to what God's put on your life. I think for me, I just try to be as authentic as I can. I put everything, like on my Instagram stories, for example. I share my life. I share what I'm doing. I'm posting about how I'm in Chris Palmer's office today, and he's organizing fire tunnels for tonight, and God's going to move.
We're the fire, so that makes sense.
Right.
We should have fire tunnels.
We're going to fuel the fire.
Phone with Scorch, really.
Right, yeah, there you go.
With Scorch.
Yes.
Yes. So I think too, it's very rare that you see anybody that does very well on social media that's not authentic, and that's part of it too. Is showing the lows, showing the highs, and being just being transparent with people. I have a podcast. My social media is largely skits. That's what people know me for, and that's where most of my views come from. But I also have a podcast, and so on my podcast, I don't think of it as, oh, this is a business venture. I think of it as, no, this is an opportunity for me to explain myself on some of these jokes and tell people, hey, this is where this is coming from. This is what I'm talking about. This is my history with this scenario. And so I think when people have that relationship with you, people forget that social media is called social media. That's the point, is you're connecting with people. It's not supposed to be a television show. You're supposed to be interacting with people. People should know who you are as a person. And so I think staying balanced with that is just being honest with yourself, being honest with other people. And the people that do that well go really far.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is something in the space, you, Dr. Palmer, before you came to Southeastern, this is a space you've also kind of operated in. It's this digital space, digital ministry is kind of blown up. Tell us a little bit about, your opinion on where this is going, right? And how we're shaping it. What does it mean for a pastor to be on an online space and different things like that?
Yeah, so I think that, the digital world is funny because it's so wide open at the moment, and there's a lot of voices that are on there. But things are moving in that direction, and I think the real key is what Taylor is saying is authenticity versus performance.
Yeah, true.
Because everybody is a little bit skeptical at this point because they see everything as performance, and because it's performance, they feel a little bit skeptical about it.
Yeah.
So somebody that, like Taylor's saying, it's social media. I'm going to go on there. I'm going to engage with people. I'm going to do my best to maybe poke a little bit of fun to myself, and then it translates as, okay, he gets it. We all get it. We're imperfect.
Right.
That translates well. I remember first seeing Taylor years ago. He does this skit where he's in a little Pentecostal church, and I instantly related because I remember being in a little Pentecostal church, and he's got on, the get up and the gear, and I immediately relate to that. And I remember thinking to myself, he's poking fun at himself, and it makes me feel like, okay, I'm not as weird. Right. Not as strange.
Yeah, exactly.
And okay, we can all get in on that. And then at that point, I'm kind of open to what he has to say. So I think, when we, as educators, get into the spaces, what we lead off with sometimes is our knowledge, or we lead off with our strongest point. But sometimes I think if we lead off with we're just like you, we're trying to figure it out. We don't have it all perfect, but we're working towards a goal. Yep. That's major. So I think about why, in the past we've been successful with it. It's because it was like, hey, we're not trying to talk to you, we're trying to talk with you.
Yep.
And that's social media. We're talking with one another. We're involved in ourselves in this conversation, and you get involved in it. And it's a great place to begin, moving the conversation forward.
Yeah, I love it. What we've learned, especially since COVID, is how incredible it is to actually be connected.
Right.
And I think that's something that a lot of people don't, because of the performative nature, the clicks and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, hey, pastor, you have an opportunity to put your entire congregation. I love that metaphor of when you post a video and 100 people watch it. Imagine that 100, you just talked to 100 of your congregation at one point, and they all felt like you were just talking to them.
Yeah.
Right.
One-on-one. When have we ever had a time frame like that? The opportunity is so incredible for us.
Yeah, it really is. It's very ripe, and there's because of that we've all become pretty educated in ourselves. We're finding that students that come into Bible schools today, starting off as freshmen, have more entry-level knowledge.
Wow.
Because they've had access to all of that. And they need to, and so the professors have to be prepared for that. Pastors have to be prepared for that. Because they know that their congregation can really know a lot about a little. And so the pastor the pastor's feeling tremendous pressure at this point to be an educated pastor.
Right.
And they're coming back to school looking for that education.
Right, because if I watch a Dan McClellan video and all of a sudden I'm questioning whether or not, God had a wife in the Old Testament, I need my pastor to be able to speak to that.
And then if the pastor get asked and he doesn't know or she doesn't know, then it's like, what do I do? And they're feeling that.
Yeah, so good. Most of your community, I'm guessing, is kind of built off people like yourself, who may have grown up in the church, or maybe homeschooled, or a part of a mega church culture. Sure. While most of your audience can be similar to you, how has your background helped you connect with audiences that didn't grow up in the same kind of environment that you did?
Well, I'll tell you, it does give a great bridge for conversation. On TikTok, for example, a lot of my comments, I shouldn't say a lot of them, I would say probably 20% of them, are people who do not have my background at all. And so they come in and maybe they'll make some sort of statement that, they're like, oh yeah, mega churches, I've always heard this and that about them. And I actually go, oh, well, hold on. So I go in the comments and I talk with them, and I'm like, well, what church are we talking about? And it actually gives a great opportunity to, I've done this a couple times, where you actually you talk to them to the point that they realize they don't really know what they're talking about. Right. They're parroting something else. And so then instead of, hey, them taking it as, this community is bad. It's like, no, actually, there's actually great communities in every city in America. If you're here for Christianity. And so then it becomes actually a little bit of an invitation into that culture. And so for those guys, then it actually ends up as a thing. And they're like, oh, these people don't take themselves that seriously. They're in on the bit, so to say. And it's a great starting point for conversation. So I would see it that way. I don't know how much it's helped me connect other than that the humor has, because it's funny, I've been blessed that lately I've been connecting with a lot of mainstream comedians who do not have that culture at all, but they can acknowledge, they can see it, and they're like, oh, no, this is funny stuff. This is shot well. The timing's great. And so I think that the art of comedy, the craft of it, I would say, that's a great way to connect with people who don't have that context. And it's also, as opposed to making content where I'm trying to be really serious and I'm like, hey, okay, this is Dr. Chris Palmer's commentary on John chapter 1. Let's break this down. It's like, no, you start with a joke. It's a great way to open up a conversation.
Yeah. How do you navigate issues that we face in society? Well, let's talk about politics a little bit.
Sure.
How do you navigate what's going on in politics from your perspective in a way that hopefully gains a listening ear?
Sure. So same thing, humor. So like when I posted some Instagram stories this year in 2024 in regard to politics. But again, I know my lane. I know who I am. I'm like, I'm not a political commentator. I'm not an expert on anything by any means. I'm just going to state my opinion. Kind of goes back to being authentic. I'm like, look, this is what I'm seeing here. This is what I believe on this. And I posted some Instagram stories. In addition to that, I do a Trump impression. I did a few videos with a Trump impression. And so, I did that. And I believe I did a Trump impression, and we talked about the portion sizes at Chipotle being lower than they used to be. And brought that out. And so that's, you gotta, and they are. They're much smaller.
They are.
Can you give us a taste?
Absolutely. I don't know if you've seen these Chipotle bowls, but they're so much smaller under the Biden administration. It would have never happened if I was in the White House, folks. You go in there, you ask for queso, they charge you $3.25. They were only charging 75 cents when I was in, which is it's actually true.
It's literally true.
It's the
reality. It's the reality.
It's like, that's what's going on.
Chipotle.
So that's the way I frame it. I'm not going to get in some convoluted conversation about geopolitical politics.
It's funny because all he has to do is talk about Chipotle for 50 seconds and he sums up all the politics.
Right. You can capture everything. It's the Chipotle Bowl Index.
You said it all.
Right.
Yeah,
I don't need to measure GPT anymore. I need to measure Chipotle serving sizes.
I'm telling you, you go in there.
The state of the country comes down to Chipotle.
It does. It really does.
Oh, that's great.
Yep.
Hey, as we wrap up our conversation, one last question. It seems pretty clear that your journey, I think, into a lot of the social media is something that I'm going to guess probably wasn't on your radar early on in life. But
no, at 5, you knew. At 5, you knew.
But what's the biggest lesson you've learned about finding your calling in a space you may have never imagined becoming kind of a vocational element?
So, I mean, the way I think about it is when I was younger, like I said, I grew up in church. I worked in church. That's what I wanted to do. Was ministry. As I began to work, though, I'm bringing up the Bible with Chris Palmer. This is scary. He might beat me lately over this.
You see my laser
That's
eyes.
dangerous,
I know.
man.
No, the scripture says that God will bless the work of your hands. And so really what I did when I started making online content is I made stuff I thought my friends would find funny.
Yeah.
And I just started posting stuff. I didn't think it was going to go anywhere. Although I was always really into film and I was always watching great comedy as a teenager, just enjoying it. And I watched a lot of great YouTubers, too, that I watched put out YouTube content, and I loved that sort of thing. And so I made stuff as a hobby for fun. And then I actually put out one video. It was PentecostalSingles.com. It was a fake trailer for that. And that sort of popped off. And, I was spinning my wheels doing everything else. At one point, I was going to be my mom wanted me to be a realtor so bad. Sorry, Mom. Oh. And, there were so many different things I spun my wheels on, but that's what worked. And anytime I went to work on comedy and content, things seemed to go that way. And so, I just trusted that was going to go. I trusted that God's hand was on it. Funny enough, I actually went to Southeastern University. I was an SEU student at an extension campus.
Wow.
And my pastor wanted me to go, and I went for 4 semesters, and then I dropped out. I did. I dropped out of an SEU dropout, and I started making online content. I just felt like it would work. I just had a feeling. I was like, I got a prophetic download. Yes, Lord. And I was like, all right, this is going to work. So I started making videos, and it worked. And haven't come back to. I didn't know I'd be coming back to SEU under these circumstances. But I'm not complaining. It's great.
We'll give you 3 credits just for this podcast.
Yeah.
How about
3
that? There we go.
Podcast.
There we go.
We're all about competency-based education.
Right.
I'll take that.
Yeah, it's been a comical engagement with the text, so that's 3 credits worth.
There you go.
Wonderful.
It works. Well, Taylor, man, what a privilege to have you on the
Thank
podcast
you.
today.
Honor's
and
all
grateful.
mine.
Yeah, grateful for our conversation and for your incredible, unique insight that you've provided our listeners. And I know you're going to be with us on some other projects as well. So we're excited
Thank you.
to have you a part of it.
Thank you again. It's been great being here, guys.
Awesome.
I love you.
Taylor.
And if you want to stay up to date with Taylor, you can check out his website at Taylor. Well, no, not an at. We're going to a website. You can check out his website, TaylorRansom.com, or his Instagram at TheRealTaylorRansom. I'm assuming that there's a lot of non-real Taylor Ransoms out there.
Well, it was funny because it was like 2015 when I made that handle, and back then they didn't have the verification checks.
Oh,
So
yeah.
the famous people had to put real in their name.
The real.
And I had like 50 followers, but I put real in my name.
Smart. You
it
thought
was
ahead.
it was a prophetic declaration. That's what it was.
Wow, that's great.
And I don't know. So we've just stuck with it.
And
Still
so
there.
check him out on Instagram at The Real Taylor Ransom. He also streams his podcast, Ransom Notes, once a week, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's true.
And that's
Wherever you go.
Apple, that's Spotify. And if you're a Google podcast listener, I'm so sorry. I don't know what you're doing.
We're
here.
gonna be praying for you.
We're going to be praying for you. Come on.
Every podcast platform, every extension campus, we satellite in.
Every single
So,
one. Every single one. Thanks for being here. And thanks for listening to Framework Leadership, everyone.
Take care.
Thank you so much for joining us today on Framework Leadership. If you're watching on YouTube, now would be a great time to hit that like button, hit that subscribe button so you can get incredible leadership content right to your YouTube feed. You can also check us out on Spotify and Apple Podcasts every single week, Framework Leadership. And if you love great email newsletters, and I know I do, make sure you check out keningle.com and subscribe to the Framework Leadership newsletter. It's an incredible piece of content we put out every single week of amazing leadership resources right to your inbox. Make sure you check it out. You can also follow us on Instagram at Kent_Ingle, at Dr. Michael Steiner, on X at Kent Ingle, and on Facebook at Kent.Ingle. Stay up to date on all the incredible things happening on the podcast and at Southeastern University. We love you guys, and we love our followers and our subscribers. Thank you so much for listening to the Framework Leadership Podcast.